Hello dear viewers, a very warm welcome to our channel. It's very good to have you here. In today's video, we're going to have a look at how to tell if we have a bad idle air control valve. The idle air control valve controls engine idle speed by regulating air bypassing the throttle plate. It works with the ECU to maintain smooth idling when cold starting, when running air conditioning, and when shifting gears on automatic transmission. Now, what are some of the symptoms that indicate the idle air control valve is going bad? Well, the first symptom is erratic or surging idle. If your idle RPM is fluctuating, if it is shifting up and down, that is a very strong indication of bad idle air control valve. This is common when the air conditioning is turned on or when the vehicle is put in neutral or park. So if you notice RPM is strongly fluctuating by, for example, 500 RPM, then that is a strong indication of a bad idle air control valve. The other symptom is when you have engine stalling at stops. You could be driving down the road and all of a sudden when you are at a traffic stop, if the engine starts stalling, that could be an indication of a bad idle air control valve. This is when the engine dies when coming to a stop with no air bypassing at idle. This is basically because the engine will starve air when you let go of the accelerator pedal, the throttle will block, the throttle will totally close, and the idle air control valve has to be there to supply the necessary air for keeping the engine idling. If that is not the case, then engine will stall. The third symptom is when you experience high idle. If RPM is extremely high, for example, RPM in the vicinity of 2000 RPM or 2000 plus RPM, that indicates a problem with the idle air control valve. If the idle air control valve is stuck open, then it will allow too much air supplying into the cylinder. This is causing fast idle. So idle speed will be high. It will not go down because the valve has stuck open. In contrast, the opposite happens when the idle air control valve stuck closed. This will cause low idle or rough idle. If the valve is stuck closed, it will choke the engine at idle. That will make idling very difficult. Either it will idle at extremely low RPM or it will have difficulty staying in 1 RPM. So a stuck closed valve can choke the engine. If the symptom is check engine light illumination, when check engine light with common codes like P050 indicates idle air control circuit malfunction, P0506 indicates idle speed lower than expected, P0507 indicates idle speed higher than expected. So these are some of the error codes that get registered when there is a problem with the idle air control valve. You can extract these codes by using an OBD2 scanner connected to your engine. 6. Hard cold start. Hard cold start is also another symptom of a failing idle air control valve. If the idle air control valve fails to open for extra air when the engine is cold, that will make starting very difficult. So if you happen to lately notice that the engine is difficult to start, especially at cold, that could be caused by a failing idle air control valve. 7. Engine dies when shifting to park or neutral. When there is a sudden RPM drop due to lack of idle compensation, that is an indication of a failing idle air control valve. The idea is when you shift to park or neutral, you let go of the accelerator pedal because you don't want the vehicle to move. And when you let go and try to shift to park or neutral, the engine dies if there is a problem with the idle air control valve because it is not compensating for that closing throttle valve. 8. Poor AC performance at idle. When the AC is turned on during idle, that will be exposing additional load onto the engine, and the engine has to maintain the idle speed by increasing engine speed, by increasing engine power output, and this is done by the idle air control valve mainly. If RPM drops too low when the AC kicks in, that is usually caused by a malfunctioning idle air control valve. Because the idle air control valve is not adjusting to the additional demand, the engine will go off. And 9. Hesitation when accelerating from idle. This is also another indication of a problem. If the engine bogs down before responding as you try to accelerate, that is also an indication of a failing idle air control valve. And finally, number 10, clicking or humming noise coming from the throttle body can also be an indication of a failing idle air control valve. If you have a faulty idle air control valve motor that sticks or struggles to move, you might hear abnormal noise like clicking or humming noise coming from the throttle body. That is also an indication of an idle air control valve motor not functioning properly. Well, those are some of the top symptoms indicating a malfunctioning idle air control valve. If you want to test the idle air control valves, there are some things that you can do. For example, try manual cleaning. Try this first. Locate the idle air control valve. It is usually attached to the throttle body. Then remove it. Usually 2 or 4 screws are there to keep it in place. Then clean with throttle body cleaner. No oil-based spray is required. And once it is thoroughly cleaned, reinstall and test it at idle. If idle improves, then the valve was dirty, and that is fixed as well. And the other thing you can do is to have a resistance check with a multimeter. Unplug the idle air control valve and set the multimeter to ohms. Check the resistance across terminals. Various vehicles have typically 10 to 50 ohm resistance. If there is no resistance, it indicates bad valve. The other thing you can do is power and signal test. You can turn on the ignition switch with the engine off and then check for 12 volt supply to the idle air control connector. You can also use a test light to see if the ECU is pulsing the signal or not. The other thing you can do also swapping. If you have a good idle air control valves that you can sure of, then you can swap with a known good idle air control valve to confirm if there is a problem with your vehicle's valve or not. So clean it. If it is stuck but functional, you can clean it, replace it if it is dead or damaged, and you can also reset the ECU after the idle air control valve is replaced. Some cars need idle re-alarm, idle readjustment, and resetting of the ECU. So that is what you can do. Always clean the throttle body every 50,000 miles. Use good quality fuel to prevent carbon buildup in the vicinity of the throttle body, and also fix vacuum leaks, this because they will mimic the idle air control valve problem issues. So these are some of the things that you can do. Finally, if your car has idle surge, if it is stalling, or if it has unstable RPM, then the idle air control valve is a likely suspect. Test it before replacing other parts. This is all we have for you regarding some of the symptoms of a bad idle air control valve and some of the things that you can do in order to fix it by yourself. If you find this video helpful and if you like what has been presented, please smash the like button. If you are new to this channel, do consider subscribing, turn on notifications so that you will be the first to get notified whenever we come up with another video. Until then, stay safe.